Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are you doing today? New episode, a new thing, a big thing, a heavy thing, an orange thing. I gave you the tease when we did the breaking news segment about this, and it's here. It's here in its full entirety. It's papaya goodness. We're talking about the McLaren P1. It's a behemoth of a car. It's a beautiful car. It's the fifth vehicle in the scale size. The last one that we got was a few years ago. It was probably about 2 years ago-ish. Was the Ferrari that we were. I mean, that thing was a beast in its own right. But this has this McLaren has it in the bag 100% in comparison to it, just because of, I mean, it's a McLaren. Everybody, oh, Ferrari. Well, you'll see. Anyway, so if you're looking for the information, this thing releases August 1st. The interesting thing is there is a GWP that is going to be coming out with it. So if you're kind of like, I'm on the fence about it, maybe that GWP is one of those things where you're like, I would love to have this. It's the McLaren P1 logo that rotates around. It's a spinning logo build that you have. So that could be something that could sway your opinion for that August 1st release. I don't know how many each store or online or whatever. I don't know how many that are going to be available, those GWPs, but I can only imagine it's not going to be something that lasts forever. So the set number 42172 has 3,893 pieces. Retails for $450 and euros. So that should give you a rough idea already what you're looking at in size as far as comparison to anything in the Technic realm. If you've built the last few vehicles, the other four, I've had the opportunity to build 2 of them in my collection, the last one being the Ferrari. If you've had that opportunity, then you already know what you're kind of stepping into, that you're getting into. You know the depth and complexity of the vehicle, of the build, of the engine train, of the engine train, the drivetrain, all of that. You have an idea of what you're stepping into. Now, there are some very complex things with this. Now, in the Ferrari, I cannot recall specifically how everything in the drivetrain went. Usually when you build a Technic vehicle, to a certain degree, everything is similar. It may not be 100% the same, but usually they tend to be very similar. In this vein, it makes some of the building a little bit easier. Sometimes it could appear redundant, but in most cases, it is still a novel opportunity, especially when you are talking a rough 2 years in between of builds of this size. However, with everything else in the Lego Technic category, part of the catalog, you're obviously going to come across things that are of certain builds, just like you would on the system side of things. So with that said, let's go ahead and pop into this. The first thing that you notice about this, after it is built, the size of it, it just feels bigger than some of the other Technic. It feels bigger than the Ferrari. I know I'm going to keep referencing that one because that is the most current one that we have. And then you got to think about updated parts and stuff like that. So all of that comes into play. The next thing that you notice about it is its papaya color. Now, I think Lego did a pretty good job of nailing it as best as they could. Obviously, it's Technic. You're going to have to look around some of the things, well, I see blue pins or I see gray ends of pins. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. There's nothing that can be done about it. So you just have to take the good with what you may consider bad and just move forth. Now, since this is a P1, it has an engine in the rear, has the open compartment that is in the front. We're going to go through and talk about some of the things the features that are really important on it, some of the design features and stuff like that may, be something that, really keep you going, wanting to buy something like this, or may hinder you in purchasing it, throwing the money out there. Maybe it's just not your cup of tea to begin with. Now, the thing that I love about these kind of cars is the suspensions in them. The suspension is independent. The travel on it on each corner is different. Well, I shouldn't say different. It travels much further on the front than it does in the rear, but it looks really sharp. So if you were to press on the driver's side front, whether it's on the left or right side, depending, where you are. I mean, the steering wheel isn't reversed, but point being, if, the steering wheel is on the left side and you're pressing on the left front right there, you're going to get more travel on that side than you are on the right side. Now, obviously, it is still going to travel regardless, and it looks sharp when it goes down as well. Same thing is in the rear, but the rear just has very little travel in comparison. It's not nearly as noticeable. It's not a bad thing. It's just not as noticeable. The other thing about it is the wheels. These are exclusive. I'm pretty sure these are exclusive to this P1. Gorgeous in the way that they're done. They have a McLaren tile logo that is in there on the outside of the rim, and then you have your low profile rubber tires. You can also see on the inside you have a McLaren logo for the brake system on each tire. So that is nice. You get that color, that pop of color that is in there. So that's a huge win. Obviously, when you're spending $450, you want to make sure that you have everything as close to the replica, real life as you can with a rough replica of that real vehicle. So as we come to the front here, we're just going to talk about, like I said, some of these features here. In the front, you have a McLaren logo again. This is on the front hood that you can open. This is your luggage compartment, if you will. And in here, you have a little bar that comes up, and that actually holds up the front hood of the vehicle so that you can get access to the inside. Again, like I said, the engine is in the rear end of this vehicle. This is not where everything is at, but you do get a little suitcase that is in here. No printing on it or anything of the sort, which, it's a small detail, but it's forgivable. But what I really like to see is when you're down in here in this bay, you have this opportunity to be able to see the shocks and stuff like that and how they work. And you can actually see them kind of moving. If you need it even more so, you have an opportunity that you can just kind of lift the front of the car and push the wheel independently to get it even more so. Now, while we're in here, you're not going to be able to see it anywhere else on the vehicle other than when you build it. But I was very curious. I've built a number of Technic over the last few years, not a ton. So when I came across this piece, and believe it or not, I had to reach out to somebody and ask about this because I had no idea. I was like, is this something new? Because it's really, really cool in the way that it is done. And on the wheels, you have this piece. It's actually called a wishbone. I figured this one out. Some really kind people that reached out to me and told me this, you car people. And you have this wishbone piece that is a new piece. It is exclusive so far to this build. And you have them on the wheels. You have one on the top and one on the bottom. It's part of the suspension of the vehicle. It's a new piece. It's kind of cool. It just seems different than everything else. I don't know. There's something about it. I just kind of like... it's nice to be able to get new things from time to time. Parts are always getting updated. That goes without saying. As new designs come about and new desires for pieces and needs for pieces come about, you're always ending up with something new. So I do appreciate getting something new, something novel to this set alone, which is not the only thing, obviously. So when you're done, you go ahead and put that rod back down there and you just close the front. It does not lock or anything of the sort. It just kind of goes there hand in hand with the, it just sits there freely. You don't have to worry about anything. So if you look at the very front of this thing, the grill pieces on the inside, it's actually grill pieces inside the front grill, which is actually really neat in the way that it is done. There is nothing on this vehicle that has, concern for ground clearance when you hold it up from the front. Everything is very intact underneath. So as you do have low profile tires and you do have a suspension that can, compress quite well, you don't have to worry about catching anything. Now, I don't really consider this a vehicle that most people are going to be taking around and playing with, especially at $450. And well, most people are not buying this for an 8-year-old kid. Be like, here, let's go play with this. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. If you are, kudos to you. Congrats to you, little kid. So as we make our way around, what we're going to do is we're going to get to the inside here. Right before we do that, the mirrors on this are different. They are different than what we have seen in the Ferrari. They are different than what we have seen in some of the others. It's a new piece. It's kind of cool, more sleek, I feel. It feels less Lego-y, less bricky. It feels more like a mirror than some of the other iterations that we have had in the past in any kind of mirror. So your doors, they come up and out. One of the things that you'll notice, and it kind of bugs me, and at the same time it doesn't, the doors are heavy. They are a heavy build in their own. So when you slide these things up, yes, you get to see the mechanism that opens it, which is really cool, by the way. It is one of those really neat ideas, assemblies. The doors themselves are fun to build. They're very, very sleek looking, different levels of texture and design and color, different parts usage. Has a really unique appeal to the car as a whole, not just it being a door. But one of the things, like I said, that you notice is you definitely notice that the kind of, it's almost like flimsy. It just kind of doesn't really hang the best. But again, most people are probably not going to display it with it open. It'll probably be closed, get some really cool photography out of it. However, moving along, we're not going to harp on that because it's minor, if anything. Before we close it, let's go ahead and talk about the inside. So on the inside of this puppy, you have your manufacturer's number that is in here. You have the P1 logo, and then you have the LTM and the number code that is here. So that is nice. The bucket seats, I really like the way that these are done. Really simple design, but they just fit really, really well. They fit perfect. Your steering wheel, we've got a big piece here. We've got a 2x2 round tile, and that is just simply for your logo. The only problem with the steering wheel is this car is so heavy and the suspension is so heavy on the front end. You can't really turn it. You've got to kind of take the weight off to be able to turn it, or if you just use your hands to turn it, it really works the best way. It's still a cool function. It's still a cool idea. It just doesn't work the best in a whole, as it really, really should. So then what we have next is you have your gear, your paddle shifter. And the way that your paddle shifter is done is kind of a simple idea. We've seen it done before. You have 7 gears in this vehicle, first through 7th, and then technically 8, I guess, if you want to consider neutral a gear. Don't want to get a false neutral. You motorcycle people, you know what I'm talking about. Anywho, so you got your little paddle shifter, and you're pulling on the left side, pulling on the right side, and that is changing your gearing as you go. Your little gear shift that is in here, let me pop this thing here. Your little gear shift, you have 3 different modes that are in here. Forward. If you are forward, you have, I believe this is the actual engine mode, the actual gas engine mode. If you push it to the center, you have your neutral. It's a little tough to get in there. You have your neutral, and then if you go to the rear, you have your, what is supposed to be your hybrid, or not your hybrid system, your E system, where you just run it on electrical charge. I misspoke. When you have it forward the whole way, that is your engine as well as your electric, your hybrid kind of idea that is going on there. Anyway, so you have those 3 different engine modes. They do 3 different things. Obviously, neutral, nothing is really spinning. You can see some things spinning, but it's not really the purpose of, to make the vehicle run or anything like that. Just in front of that, what we have is we've got our little printed screen here of, the console, whatever you want to call it, whatever's in there so that you can see what is going on. Another little console piece in there that is printed just above your steering wheel so that you can see your gauges and all those kinds of things. So everything works pretty well in unison. I've not really come across any problems. I will tell you this, that there are a few sections, drivetrain especially, when you go back and you look through the manual, you need to walk through and be very, very detail oriented, very articulate in making sure that you focus on specific parts, placement, and then attachment from the assemblies to the larger assembly. Just because with Technic, as you know, you mess up one little spot and you're having to pull apart a whole big behemoth. And Technic is not easy to pull apart in its own right, but it's really not easy to pull apart when you've got to get something way down inside and you don't want to tear an entire assembly apart. You've got to be picky and choosy about which piece you're going to move, which piece you may not move. And it tends to be kind of a pain in the butt, to say honestly. So when you close up your door here, one of the interesting things about the door is it could just fall, just flush or whatever. Sometimes your door will fall outside of where it should be. All you have to do is slightly lift it and place it in. It's almost got like a little cupping area that you have an opportunity to be able to place it. Your door latch essentially is what it amounts to, so that you can handle that little dealio. Now, as we get towards the rear end, you can take off the entire rear deck, which we'll talk about in a moment. But before we do that, as you come around to the rear, again, you get to see the cool suspension and stuff like that on the rear. But down underneath, you have this little piece, and it is just a little gear mechanism. And all it does is it allows your rear wing to be manipulated, to move up, to move down. So when you move your rear wing to the upright position, it pops up. You get to see it do its whole little dealio, its whole dance. And the cool thing is it actually changes the angle of the wing the entire way up and the entire way down. Rotate it the opposite direction, and then you come back down with it. Now, you do get an opportunity to be able to take off the rear deck so that you can actually get a look at the engine on the inside, which is really, really sharp. All you have to do is take out two little pins. They're orange in color. They do not match the papaya. I don't think Lego's really in the business of making papaya-colored pins. Nevertheless, that's all you have to do. I lied. Your rear wing assembly, you have to pop that off first. I always forget it. I've done it a number of times, and I always forget to take that off first. So you pop off your rear assembly. It's just held on by two pins. Boom, done. Rear deck pins removed. Rear decking taken off. There's a McLaren word logo on the back of that part as well. Now you have an access to the exhaust system, to the double diffuser that's in the back. You get a chance to see the suspension again with those wishbone pieces. You get to see all the gold that is inside of this. And I'm assuming that has something to do with heat control or something like that, so you're not melting bodywork or such. I mean, that would seem like the most common sense thing. Anyway, the engine. We get in here, we've got a P1 logo. We've got some carbon fiber printed feel to these pieces that are just above. But when you get in here, you have your trans clear so that you can see your V8 engine that is in here, and you can see the pistons move. Obviously, the pistons are moving at different speeds based on, what gear you're in and such like that. So that's cool. I do like the way that it kind of looks like you have a suspension that is built into the rear, kind of attached to the engine. I don't know if that's so much like almost like a sway bar feel that is going on there, or is it more so like I'm just trying to hold all these assemblies and / pieces together. Maybe it's both. It would be really cool if they managed to incorporate it into both. That would be kind of fun. I think that would be a neat little design choice if that were the case. Anyway, so while we're in here, you see the engine, you get to see all the gearing towards the drivetrain and all that. Really fun. It's a really fun build as far as that goes, but I am telling you right now, you have to focus on it. You have to be 100% focused on what you're doing, where pieces are going, and then when you go to attach things, making sure that all pins are slid into place, all axles are pushed into the proper areas, because if you don't, any of you that have built Technic before, especially something of this complexity, know all it takes is one simple thing. Now, I will say I have not noticed any flaws in this. I know when the Ferrari came out, there was an issue, and I wasn't the one. I had noticed that there was an issue, that there was a problem with the drivetrain. Well, I don't know if you guys know. There's a gentleman named Blesh, another RLFM, and he does. I think is it the Racing Bricks? I think it's Racing Bricks. Blesh actually came out with a guide of, I believe he heard back from the Technic guys, came out with a guide that said you actually need to, or maybe he reverse engineered it. I have a feeling he's some kind of car engineer. I think he is an engineer. Anyway, reverse engineered it, whatever he did, so that you had the pieces in the correct order. Instructions happen. There are problems with things. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes it's just, it's a computer thing. Sometimes it's a human error thing. The human problem. Anyway, but aside from that, I did not come across any things where where I was kind of like, oh, this gear really is not in the right spot, or this pin is really kind of jacking things up in this location, or these things are not talking together. This is not moving. That was definitely a thing that happened in the Ferrari. I know there was some complaint initially, and I know that the instructions went back and they were remodeled. I know the online ones were changed. And then I'm assuming at some point in time, the paper ones were redone to a certain degree. I don't, those few changes that need to be made. It wasn't a whole lot. So under the rear deck, everything looks sharp. It looks fun. It looks great. The cool thing is, you can hook a motor up to this and watch it run if that's your thing. I'm just that person. I like to, stick it on top of a box or a stack of bricks or whatnot and, high center it so that I can just see how things move. I don't really need to hook up the engine or the motor to it to make it run, but some of you might want to see that if you want to display it, however you want to display it. Maybe that's an option that you have. Maybe that's an option you want. So if it is, you definitely have that opportunity. So on the rear decking, before we put it back on, across the rear end of this thing, you have some of those soft Technic beam type pieces. Those are soft Technic axle pieces. Those are kind of nice to outline the lighting and stuff in the rear. It's just a really sharp look. And everything actually really comes together quite well. One thing that I will say is the rear deck. I love how it simply just pops off. Yes, you have to take the wing off. I know there's going to be some folks that are going to complain. You're always going to have somebody that complains. There's always going to be a complaint about something. But it is kind of nice to be able to take the rear deck off by itself. Unfortunately, you can't in this regard. You definitely got to remove the wing because it will not come off. I can promise you that. But with that aside, what do you have? Well, you've got one really cool vehicle. It's really sharp. It's really big. It's very dynamic. I'm just a big fan of the way it turned out. Like I said, one of the things that I wish, obviously you wish the steering wheels would move better. Unfortunately, it's not going to move the wheels that much just because, there's a lot of flexibility in those joints. There's a lot of movement in those pieces and stuff like that. The tolerances are there of such so that while, yes, it's supposed to look like such and do such and such a thing, it's still plastic at the end of the day. It's got a lot of weight that's pushing down on it. And I know some people are going to, it's going to be a detractor to them. But if you think about it, if it weren't a rubber tire and it were like a plastic tire, you probably wouldn't have as much friction pulling on that linkage there. The very last thing that you get with this thing is a plaque, a printed plaque that says McLaren P1. It gives you all the instructions, not the instructions. It gives you all the details of this thing. So you have that opportunity to display that as well. Or you can just hide it or put it wherever you want. Maybe you want to put it in the front. You can't put it actually in the front, but you could toss it inside, I guess. And it can go for a ride with you in your McLaren P1. So as the car as a whole, I think it's a pretty good vehicle. Price is where I always get stuck with these, right? The price for these vehicles, I understand where it is. I understand $450. I understand the amount of parts that you are getting with this. I understand the amount of plastic that you are getting with this. It's really hard to justify though. If you're a McLaren fan, you're a race fan, you're somebody that's like, I need to have that, then you're going to need to have it. You're somebody that's going to need to have it day one or whatever. I don't think these things will there will be a concern of them maybe going out of stock. I don't expect that to really happen. And it's not a slight to anybody else. It's not a slight to Lego or anything like that. That price point, it is Technic. You have race fan enthusiasts and stuff like that. Those people are going to be all in on it, and that's fine. It just, it just becomes a matter of, is it really going to do that kind of volume? Maybe not in the beginning, but I definitely think spiking it with that GWP, that is going to push a lot of people to pull the trigger on it sooner rather than later, instead of waiting, a month or 2 weeks or whatever, just so that they have that opportunity to be able to get it first, get the GWP. And, who knows? GWPs, it's a fickle monster because, it's a marketing ploy to a certain degree. You're getting something free, but you could also count it as, well, it's part of the set, right? I'm getting it as part of the set. I'm getting it as part of this build. And the other thing about GWPs is this: GWPs hold a value. All right. Everything holds a value in Lego to a certain degree. When the Ferrari came out and you had the accompanying book with it, that book was going for just about as much as the Ferrari itself because there were only a select number of them. It became a limited edition. So some people were paying as much as what the set was at that time to be able to get a book because they wanted to complete the ensemble, right? They wanted the book, they wanted the car, they wanted the box. And that's the last thing I forgot to mention, the boxes. I'm not a box keeper with most things. When it comes to these kind of things, I'm a box keeper. The box is gorgeous. 3 different build boxes, the main box, the instructions, everything's laid out so well. 100% going to be a keeper for me. The difference was with the Ferrari. I believe the Ferrari, you could put everything. I think you could put the whole thing in that box, if I'm not mistaken. However, is it worth the $450? It's going to be up to you. I will always take something that's cheaper. You want to give it to me for $300? I'll take it for $300. But I definitely think, the value is not quite at $450. I could definitely see it more so at $400. I think a lot of people, if they see the $399.99, are more apt to pull the trigger on this thing and click the button buy versus $449.99. But that's just my opinion. So you have to let me know what you think. August 1st, available everywhere. Get yours. Take a chance on getting the GWP if you so choose. So that's going to wrap it up. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.